Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Divorce Differently podcast. This week, we're talking about nesting. You may have heard about that term. It's a parenting arrangement that requires the children staying in the house and the parents coming and going. And as we all know, when you're separating, one of the biggest worries is how to protect your children from disruption. And we're trying to manage their challenges, their emotional challenges, and their their ongoing routine as well. And so the idea of nesting can be really appealing to a lot of people because the children remain in the house. And so there's a sense of stability with regards to the children. But in this episode, we're going to talk about whether this is truly a sustainable model. And does it create additional pressures over time? What are the things to look out for if you are contemplating nesting? As a warning based on how other people have experienced this arrangement, but also thinking through what will work best for your family. So we're going to look today at what nesting is, how exactly it works, and what the keys are to make it work if you feel that it's the right solution for your family. To talk about this, I've invited Bernadette Najjar. Bernadette is a certified parenting coach with over 30 years' experience supporting children and families across education, family support, and therapeutic settings. Beginning her career as a Montessori teacher, she went on to work as an early years educator and child and family support practitioner before launching her coaching business called Thrive Together Parenting. Part of Bernadette's work is supporting parents navigating challenges such as separation and co-parenting, alongside parents who want to build stronger relationships and feel more confident in their parenting. Bernadette, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you, Chloe.
So
Yeah.
I gave a little overview of what nesting is, but it'd be great for you to give us a little bit more information about what it is in practice and why do you see families opting for that model?
Yeah, I mean, like you've said, very eloquently, what nesting is. It is where the children are staying in the family home, but it is the parents who are coming and going. They're doing the
Yeah,
rotating. They've got usually a second base. Some parents choose to stay with families for financial reasons. And what they will do is they'll rotate. It's the children who stay. The
yeah,
children, they keep the familiarity.
yeah,
It's usually a very child focused on the surface. It can look like a very child focused decision,
yeah,
but it has to be done right, and it
yeah,
has to be done with the emotional needs of the child constantly at the forefront of choices and decisions that are made
yeah,
for it to work
yeah.
successfully.
I
Yeah.
I think you just mentioned two elements to consider carefully. Actually, is this really best for the children, first of all,
Yeah.
and then there's of course the financial piece because you have to be able to afford or at least have a place to stay,
Yeah.
and so for a lot of people that's not always manageable from from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
But for those who do choose to put that kind of arrangement in place, in your experience, does that work well for the children? Is that benefit always realized?
Uh, it isn't always realized, and it usually is that the reasons they weren't getting along in the first place don't ever go away. They're still there.
Yeah,
Um, I was working recently with someone who they were nesting, but they'd chosen to nest with the other parent in a separate room.
okay.
Um, so the talk for me from a parenting perspective was that that's very difficult for children to understand
Hmm.
because our children should have free access to us 24/7,
Yeah,
7 days a week. You cannot tell a child it's not mummy's turn today.
yeah,
That child needs full access, and that
yeah,
is something that would be very difficult to maneuver around and sometimes not
yeah.
very successful.
I've seen clients try that as well because I find that these kind of topics come up a lot in the early days of separation and divorce before there's an actual permanent arrangement agreed, and where people just don't want to be cohabitating or spending as much time together.
Yeah.
And the idea of splitting up time in the house and just saying, I'll make myself scarce or I'll, leave the house when it's your time. It is a bit difficult for the children to understand because it's kind of a gray zone, isn't it? The
Mhm.
parent is there, but you're not meant to really go see them. And,
Yeah.
especially for younger children, that has it doesn't mean
Very
anything to
difficult.
them, this idea that,
It does
you
not.
know, they
No,
can't
it
go
feels
see the
like,
other parent.
yeah, and it will just feel like rejection,
Yeah.
because they do not understand the logistics of
Yeah.
adulthood. They don't understand the reasons for it. All they know is that they can't have access to a parent that they want
Yeah.
access to at that moment.
Yeah.
And that's very, very difficult. Parents also, I've known of parents who they will rent one flat and
Yes.
they
And share
will
both
share
sides,
that,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that can be successful. Um, but there's a lot of things to consider, and I think,
Yeah.
like everything, and I think we will conclude that it's that if it's done well, it's
Yeah.
going to work. If it's not done well, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then you look at a different alternative.
And,
Yeah.
and then I guess what you're highlighting is that there's a lot of different options in terms of how you can arrange things. And there's, some will work better than others.
Yeah.
But I think it's about really thinking through what's going to work in practice
I think
for your family and ensuring, I would say, regular check-ins, don't you think, in terms of
I totally
making sure
agree.
that it's actually working for everyone?
Totally.
Because
Yeah.
the principle and the reality
Mm.
can be quite different.
Absolutely. And it can sometimes be a knee-jerk reaction to what is the quickest thing we can do at the moment,
Yeah.
so that we create some kind of stability.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes majority way of thinking is the stability for the children, but there is also the aspect that the parents aren't ready yet to separate completely.
Yeah.
And that can be confusing for children.
Hmm.
So I think it's very important that we are very, very honest to ourselves about what is motivating us
Yeah.
to nest and
Yeah.
not. And um, are we capable of sticking to the boundaries? Are we capable
Hmm.
of sticking to the plan? And like you said, it should have some flexibility where you revisit it. It's almost like a
Yeah.
SWOT analysis, where you make your plans and then if this isn't working, let's go back to it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think as long as there are no safeguarding concerns within the custody agreements, then they should be, pardon the kind of obvious about, but they should be grown adults about it. So there should be
Yeah.
some flexibility of like,
Yeah.
well, if that's not working, let's revisit it, you know.
Yeah. I think
And
in a lot of cases, the driver behind this kind of agreement or arrangement is because actually people don't really want to be in each other's space anymore. And they don't, so while it's trying to find the best of both worlds where the parents can not have to cohabitate, but they are not yet, splitting up the children.
yeah,
And sometimes they just don't have the means to put that in place at that stage anyway.
yeah,
But for the parents, while they do get a degree of freedom from each other,
yeah, yeah.
there's still a lot of logistics, right? Because they're running a
Yeah.
household together.
Yeah. There's a lot of logistics, and logistics are one thing, but the
Hmm.
emotional safety and security of your children is another thing.
Yeah,
And that has the biggest impact on whether your children will go on to develop emotionally healthy, because
yeah,
divorce doesn't have to be something that happens and your children cannot go on to thrive. Of course they can.
absolutely.
We do know research tells us that it's not the divorce itself that can cause harm, it's the conflicts that they are
Yeah,
witnessing that cause the harm.
absolutely.
So managed properly, with that in mind, that your
Yeah,
children are at the forefront. And I would tell parents often, you've got to remember that you love your child more than you love the need to be right. And if you
it's a good
keep that at
point.
the forefront of
Hmm.
every decision you make, you
Hmm.
can suck it up and remember that you are putting on this front that's needed so your child remains safe
Yeah,
and they're not
which is
exposed.
really the main motivation usually, for most people in divorce.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just
And that's why
remembering
usually,
that, yeah. Because our nervous system, we react. It's there. It's the neural, it's the
yeah.
neuroscience. We are not conscious of how we react most of the time. We're
Hmm.
scanning for safety and danger and threats. And when we're heightened in relationships, that is a threat, and our
Yeah,
bodies
absolutely.
react. So it requires that real pause moment where we
Yeah.
won't react, and it's like just count to 10, before you think of the children, think of the children.
Yes.
Um,
And do you find that it can be confusing for the children? Because there is a degree of ambiguity, I guess, in nesting. It's not as clear cut as the traditional model where, you go to moms or dads or whoever else is in at specific times. What has been your experience around how children experience it?
yeah, children, if they are not if they're not given honesty on a very
Hmm.
developmental level,
Yeah.
they will make up their own reality. So
Yeah.
and that's sometimes a lot scarier than the
Hmm.
actual reality.
Yeah.
And
In a lot of cases it
depending on
is.
the age of the child, they can blame themselves.
Mm.
And so reality, honesty, our children they need the reality and they need the security within that reality.
Hmm.
So our job and role should not be protecting them from the truth. It
Yeah,
should be how do we support them emotionally through the truth
I
that is
agree.
that is good for them, that will, you know, it, it's only fair that we let our children into what's happening. It involves them. This is their life.
Yes, it is their time with each
It is
parent as well.
yeah, and we do that out of a need to protect our children. It's never really done maliciously.
Yeah.
It's done perhaps sometimes because that is too uncomfortable for a parent to
Hmm.
sit in front of a child and effectively make them uncomfortable.
Mm.
But we need to sit in that bravery. We need
Yeah.
to sit and be brave for their sake of like, well, as uncomfortable as it feels for us, our children have a right to know what is
What's
happening.
happening? Yeah.
So I think it can be harmful if we protect them from the truth.
Hmm.
It can be harmful if we are reactive to the situation and we're not prioritizing their emotional well-being.
Yeah.
It can be harmful if we have plans and a plan in place and then we break that plan. So
Yes.
in effect, we're taking away the stability, children need stability, they need
Yeah.
predictability, they need consistency,
Hmm.
they need to know what's happening.
Yeah.
And in the absence of that, or if they get in the middle of a conflict, they are with two people who they predominantly love more than anything in the world. No matter
Yeah.
how these two adults are feeling about each other,
Yes.
your child loves you. It may not feel like it half the time, but
Yeah.
they love you more than any other human being on the face of the planet. So the hardest thing is that inner conflict of like, well, if dad is saying this and mum is saying this, or in the case of same-sex relationships, if mum's saying this and mum's saying this, or dad's saying this and well, I love these two people.
How do I choose and why do I need to choose?
How do I choose?
Yeah.
So keep that separate. That's
Yeah.
your issue. That is not your child's issue.
Yeah.
And this emotional containment, when you are a grown adult, you are the one who contains your children emotionally.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
are never the ones who contain you emotionally.
Hmm.
We must seek professionals or friends or family, grown adults, but we should
Yes.
never
Not our
expect
children.
our children. And sometimes parents do expect their children to contain them emotionally going,
Yeah, unfortunately.
and that can be very damaging for a child.
But you touch on an important point around honesty and the discomfort that comes from some of those conversations. And also sometimes people feel that, oh, they don't need to know, or they think that children don't understand really what's happening, and so it's fine.
Mhm.
There's sometimes a tendency to underestimate the impact on the children. But I feel like with nesting, just like with any parenting arrangement, depending on the age of the children, they may or may not be involved in some of the conversations. But even if they haven't, just
Mhm.
taking the time to explain to them, this
Yeah,
is how things are going to work from now on.
yeah.
It's surprising how many people skip that step because it is an uncomfortable conversation and they've just negotiated with their soon-to-be ex how things are going to happen and they just put it in place and omit to actually
Yeah,
explain to the children what it's going to feel like and what it means in practice for them.
absolutely, absolutely. And we can communicate that on a developmental level.
Yeah,
We can choose our words. A part of my role is supporting parents to have that kind of narrative of what you would say
yeah,
and what's appropriate. And ages are to be considered too, because if you've
yeah,
got a little 0 to 3-year-old in your care, then that 0 to 3-year-old, that's very, very formative years. They need to be
yes,
with their primary caregiver 24/7. So it's
yeah,
not going to work that they have half the time with one and half the time with another.
yeah,
Or you decide amongst you who is the primary caregiver, who is, our children attached securely to two primary caregivers
yeah,
and other people later on, but their formative years, 0 to 3,
yeah,
they need their primary caregiver at hand all of the time. That's where the
yeah,
emotional security comes from, to feel securely attached. And then you have different ages where you've got probably 3 to 7, where they need they don't think logistically.
Yeah.
They need that kind of reality supported to them and explained to them developmentally.
Hmm.
And then you have the teenagers, the teenage brain, I won't get too much into it, but it does go back into that real egocentric stage of
Yeah.
like, so they're in that egocentric stage, but they're also looking for authenticity and truth.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
can see right through
Yes.
your fakeness, you
Yeah.
know. So they want the truth and they want to be on board.
Yeah.
And when it is appropriate, give them choices.
Yeah. I agree.
You're still the guide, you're still the adult in the situation. But when you feel it is appropriate and there is room and a space there for their autonomy to be expressed, let
Hmm.
that happen. That's very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I
Make
agree.
decisions together, don't lock them out. So ages are also to be considered. And I think for me, the predominant message is what does that lived experience feel like for your children? That's
Yeah.
kind of the main thing. I look through the lens of their eyes, not through your eyes, through, get
Yeah.
really, really onto their level of what things look like and try to feel what their experienced feelings are.
Yeah. And
And
that
remember,
applies to all your parenting arrangements, doesn't it?
absolutely,
That should be really
absolutely,
the key. Because
yeah.
I think we all have a tendency as parents of to think about logistics and, well, this doesn't work for me, let's do it this way, etc. And so, and it becomes negotiating one parent's needs against the other.
Yeah.
But actually, the main and most important need is the children's,
Yeah,
and sometimes we lose track of that.
of
And
course
there's
you do. Of course
yeah,
you do. We're guilty of it because we're imperfect, Chloe.
yeah,
We're not perfect. We're human beings. We bring all of our history to parenting. We
yeah,
don't just wake up one morning and we have this tiny baby and we are a new person. We bring everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly with us.
absolutely,
And yes, it applies right across the board, and I think being aware of that, but never forgetting that if we do show up in our, imperfectly, we can always repair. So if there's been a
yes,
rupture, if we regret the way that we handle something with repair, that is actually healthy for our children
yeah.
to experience.
Yeah, to see us apologize and recognize that we didn't handle things the way we wanted to.
Yeah, no,
That's
yeah,
teaching them the skills to
yeah,
do it too.
absolutely. Without a doubt, I mean, it's a healthy thing to have in relationships for them to know that it's cyclical. We can be in
Yeah,
connection, we can be in disconnection, and then we reconnect, and then
yeah,
we can rupture, then we repair, then we're back on track, and that's a normal cycle of relationships.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
when there is rupture and no repair that the damage happens, that
Okay.
the hurt happens. And I do tell my parents, think of the narrative you are creating for your children when they grow up.
Oh, that's
What,
a good way of looking at it.
yeah, how will they
How are they going to talk
remember?
about this later?
Yeah,
Yeah,
how will they remember this experience? They're going to remember what's factual is it didn't feel great.
yeah,
This happened and this was not good. It didn't feel good. There was quite a lot of disruption. These are factual things that's going to be in their narrative.
yeah,
But do you want them to also say, but my parents were great at how they managed it? We
yeah,
never felt unloved. We never felt unseen. We never felt like our voices were not welcome. We never felt considered. If our parents got it wrong, they
mhm,
repaired it. What is the narrative you want your
yeah.
child to be telling when they're adults, when they're sat in therapy?
Yeah. And blaming you for everything.
I mean, I'm of the thought that everyone should have therapy.
Yeah.
Um, but that's another tale. But what is that narrative you want your child to be telling?
Yeah.
Because
I
you're
think
not
that's a
going to.
really great way of thinking about it. And that actually forces you to put yourself in their shoes and
Yeah,
to think about what the
absolutely.
experience looks like and feels like to
Absolutely.
them. And it's true, I think, we are all imperfect in how we remember facts, but we
Yeah.
always remember feelings. We
Oh,
remember how
without a
people made
doubt.
us
Well
feel,
said,
how
Chloe.
situations
Without.
that made
Oh,
us feel, and
with
that's what your kids are going to take away with them.
yeah, how they were meant to feel,
Yeah,
and it's very, very, very important that we think about the future child that we want, not just the one that's in front of us.
true.
What do we want life to look like? Do we want to be in connection with this child when they are adults and we are older? Or
Yeah,
do we want to be in disconnection? Because it's happening now. We're creating that now.
yeah.
That's what we are creating now. And I
So
have,
moving back to more, I guess, logistical side of things. what would you say are the main challenges that you would flag to someone who's contemplating nesting? Just, it doesn't mean that it's a deal breaker for them, but for them to be aware of some of the complications that could come up in that kind of arrangement.
First and foremost, what does it look like for your child? What will it look like? That's the first thing I would ask you to consider.
Yeah.
What is this decision going to look like in reality for our children?
Yeah.
And then I would ask them to consider, are we the type of people that can stick to a plan? Or
Hmm.
can we be
Yeah.
truthful to that?
Yeah.
Um, are we also the type of people that will take ownership if we have stepped out of that boundary and
Hmm.
come back in? We take
Yeah.
ownership for that. What will communication look like? If we
Yeah.
decide on a living arrangement, is that realistic for our
Hmm.
children? And
Hmm.
if there are multiple children, one size will not fit all for one child.
That's true as well.
So to consider what it looks like for all of the children,
Yeah.
age differences, what their needs will be.
Yeah.
Consider the motive of why you're really doing it. If it's
Hmm.
about stretching out that separation for both of you, then is that
Hmm.
really the right reason why we should be doing this?
Yeah.
Um, so I
Yeah,
think
I think that touches on a good point actually around the duration. And we talked earlier about having, regular checkpoints, but I think in my experience, and I think you were saying earlier that you know somebody who's had a long-term experience of nesting.
yeah,
I've mostly
absolutely.
seen it work as kind of an interim arrangement while
Mm,
the divorce is underway, while we're still
me too.
waiting to, unlock the equity in the home and be
Yeah.
able to move on our separate ways. The It feels to me like over time it becomes harder and harder to manage, and especially when each parent might start having a new partner, and it just muddies the water a bit more. What's your experience around that?
Well, my experience around that, I mean, I think I was telling you earlier, I did some research for the podcast and I came up with this lady, Beth Behrendt. It's Behrendt, if anyone wants to research her. And she has written a book called Nesting After Divorce. And it was fascinating watching her and listening to her because they've been
Yeah.
doing it for years and they now
Okay.
have other partners.
Yeah.
And she talked about the logistics right at the very beginning. They have three sons, so it was a logistical nightmare to separate
Oh,
their belongings
yeah.
and move away from their schools. So they decided together that they would
Yeah.
nest.
Yeah.
And it wasn't smooth. It didn't go smoothly
I'm
in the
sure.
beginning. There was still the chores to do, where she predominantly did the laundry, etc., and he predominantly did the DIY stuff.
Okay.
When you're nesting and they're in that house on their own, they had to take care of everything.
Yeah.
And this is a man who she says, I mean, I don't want to really quote, verbatim, but I think she was hinting along the lines, he didn't do laundry, you know.
Okay.
Um,
So he had a learning curve there,
he had a
which
learning
he would
curve.
have had if they were alternating childcare anyway. I mean, if
Exactly.
in either case, that would have been a new experience.
Exactly. And they have been doing this for years.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
apparently it is they say it's the best decision they've ever made. It brought them closer, obviously not romantically, but it brought them
Yeah.
closer in getting along.
Yeah.
Um, she said that they started off each doing all of the chores, and then
Yeah.
when things moved into a more smoother way of being around each other, they decided, so it goes back to us coming back to a plan and it can be adjustable and flexible.
Yeah.
They decided that, well, you know what, I don't mind doing the laundry. It's not a job that I really dislike. So how about
Yeah.
I do the laundry? Even on the days when I'm coming in and you're leaving, I'll just do the
Yeah.
laundry or vice versa. Um, and any plumbing that needs doing a DIY, you good to do that? And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I can do that. So it's about communication, isn't it?
It really is. But
Uh,
what I'm hearing is actually a lot of those interactions are very similar to the ones you would have when you're married and cohabitating. So
absolutely.
the relationship needs to be strong enough to continue. I mean, if
Correct.
that was the key of the issue, I can tell you in
Yeah.
my divorce, the issue was it was not balanced,
Yeah.
and it would have been very difficult to have those conversations
Mm.
after divorce when we couldn't even get him when we couldn't have him when we were married and good willing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's about knowing that. It's about knowing what the relationship was like prior, I should imagine.
Yeah,
About knowing what you are able to actually end up what it
yeah,
looking. Um, And like we've said before, is this long term? How long are we going to try it for? Shall we do it
Yeah.
until the end of school term? If that's a logistic that you need to be thinking about,
Yeah.
moving schools, etc., then let's revisit it after that. If it's going
Yeah.
well, then we're thinking, well, you know what, it's ticking most of the boxes at the moment, and we are managing the plan, and we are managing to not attack each other every time we see each other.
Yeah. And the kids seem
Um,
happy and they've
yeah,
adjusted,
so
so that's
let's
yeah.
keep going until we can no longer, and we have to look at it in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, and like
And I
you
think
said,
that's the case with any parenting schedule, right? There is a bit of trial and error. It's very common for people to start on one model and then realize, oh, that doesn't work. Or the kids say,
absolutely,
we don't
absolutely,
like it this way. And
yeah,
you adjust. So
yeah,
children change, grow, parents
yeah,
change, meet
yeah,
new people, etc.
absolutely. And there are no longitudinal studies. There's no research out there to say a yeah
Yeah,
or
it's a
nay.
shame.
There's nothing out there to say that. But we do have lots of evidence to know that if children are whatever way they're living, if they're living in
Mhm.
constant conflict, we do know that that is harmful to our children.
Yes. Yeah.
But what we do not know yet is if nesting is a preferred choice for the development of our children.
Yes.
Why not? But I would assume your common sense comes in and it's like, well, we either know it's working or it's not working.
Yes.
We either know that we are capable of putting the right plans in place or we're not capable. And let's
Hmm.
be truthful here. You'll say you're going to do this and then you won't do this and da 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 da. And we go down the judgment and we go down the
Yeah.
attacking and what have you. Um, so yeah, I think, of course, it can work. People
Yeah.
are saying that it works, and it doesn't work, and that's when people decide that we've got to change this.
Yeah.
I think in preparation, it would serve your children well if you are very honest and reflective before you make a choice, so the harm is
Yeah.
not done. There is no harm done. And you make your choice. You look at your finances, you think, okay, logistically, it's going to work, but hang on, it's not all about logistics.
Yeah.
Because children can adapt to two homes if that's the choice that you
It's
make.
been done for many years, hasn't it?
Yeah, and they adapt very, very well because it's about the
Yeah.
safety they feel in both homes.
Yeah. And
I
sometimes
will,
clarity is a big benefit for children. They even though it's not they might not like having two different homes, but if they understand what what the setup is, and that
absolutely.
these weeks I'm with mom, or these weeks I'm
Yeah.
with dad or other mom, or whatever it is, they there is comfort in routine for children. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people hang on to the idea of keeping them in the same four walls, where
Yeah.
really what gives them the most stability and security is the consistency of the parenting.
Without a
It's
doubt. Yeah.
less attached to the
Yeah.
location of the parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's how they feel in those four walls.
Yeah,
Whatever they look like. They
exactly.
can live in a castle, they can live in a tent, but if they're feeling emotionally secure within those four
Yeah,
walls.
yeah.
Um, Dan Siegel talks about the four S's of safety.
Hmm.
To feel safe, soothed, secure, seen.
Yeah,
And if our children are experiencing all of these things, then they will grow up to be a well-developed, well-rounded human being.
yeah,
And that's what we want for our children. And that
absolutely.
does not take a physical environment. It's
Yeah,
the emotional environment that they're
yeah.
living in. Um,
So I think
and
that's an important
so,
message actually for those who, because I've had a few clients who've contemplated nesting out of guilt, in that sense that I don't want my child or my children to have to change homes every week or whatnot, and for them to have to pay the price of our relationship ending. But actually, I think it's important to free ourselves of some of that guilt,
without a
and
doubt,
and actually that it doesn't matter quite as much as we think, for them to be moving. As again, if they feel loved and heard and safe in both locations, there are plenty of people who have raised thriving, happy, successful children
absolutely,
in two different
absolutely,
homes.
absolutely. And also, if they are feeling that guilt,
Hmm.
is that coming over with like our children pick up on the nuances of it doesn't have to be spoken
Yeah,
if there's any resentment of the way that they're living, but that we had to do this because we felt really bad at separating you
yeah,
and moving you into two homes. That can come through, unconsciously. We're not consciously letting it come through, but it can come
yeah,
through.
absolutely.
And the guilt should be carried if you are not prioritizing them, if you're not considering their emotional well-being, not where they live.
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
they're more than capable with parents who love them dearly and support them dearly of thriving in two separate homes.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously nesting as well, because that's what we're on
Yes,
here to talk about.
yes.
When
But
it's
it's
done,
not the only solution to provide
it's not the
stability
only
and security
solution.
to your
It's
children.
not the only solution. And to exercise self-compassion. This is
Yeah,
hard. Going
it
through a
is hard.
divorce is traumatic. It's
Hmm.
not something you have planned to do in the past. It
Yeah,
happened. And have that self-compassion, because if we're running on empty, if we're
yeah,
not looking after ourselves, and self-compassion comes in that,
yeah.
if we're not taking care of ourselves, we have nothing left for them.
That's true.
We really don't
We
have
can't
any.
show up as the best version of
No,
ourselves as a
we are
parent.
literally running on emotional and physical empty.
Yeah.
So that self-compassion, it's not selfish, it's
Hmm.
actually selfless, it's actually
Yeah.
something our children need. And
Hmm.
indeed, if we role model that for them, we are letting them know that you don't keep flogging away every day without thinking of yourself. That's not a
Yeah.
healthy way to live. And it does allow us to show up the best version of ourselves.
Yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
also like to add as well, Chloe, because I get a lot of parents who don't parent the same.
Hmm. That's
They have,
very common, unfortunately. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes that's part of the problem during the marriage,
yeah,
is the
they have
very
two
different
different,
parenting
yeah,
styles.
yeah. They have two different parenting styles, and they worry about, well, this is my approach, and I
Hmm.
know their approach is not the same, etc., etc. We do know repeatedly that children only need one main caregiver who shows
Yes.
up in what I would say is a very authoritative, as opposed to authoritarian, in a
Yeah.
very calm, kind manner, considering their well-being, making sure that they are soothed and
Hmm.
seen and feeling secure. And it takes one main caregiver.
Yeah.
And we will torture ourselves if we think we can control how the other shows up. We
Yeah.
can't do it.
And it's not, and actually, I think one thing I often tell my clients is it's not necessarily a bad thing for there to be different rules in different households, as long as they're consistent in each household. They go to
Absolutely.
school and there's a different set of rules. They go to their grandparents and there's a different set of rules. They go to a friend's house, there's different. They're used to adapting, and that's life, different environments. You don't behave the same in the office as you do at home.
Totally.
So
Totally.
we all experience that. What makes it difficult for them is when there's instability and inconsistency around what's expected of them and how they get treated.
Totally. And that could be part of the narrative too.
Hmm.
In one home I felt this way, in another way I felt this way, but I
Yeah.
knew that that's how things were, and I always knew that that's how things were, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And like you say, that is life.
Yeah.
As long as they have someone who is seeing them and soothing them
Yeah.
and repairing when they get it wrong.
Yeah. I love this. That's
Um,
a great takeaway. I think
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a really good thing
Yeah.
for people to keep in mind, just to take away some of that guilt we have as parents, and we
Oh,
feel that we have to
yeah.
get it all perfectly right.
No, no.
Uh,
Evidence tells us 30 to 40% of the time, if we're getting it right, if we are
yeah,
attuned, if we are responsive, then that's enough. If we can
that's
do,
a relief.
yeah, truly, if we can do more, but our
Yeah.
children don't want us to be 100% attentive. They do not
Yeah.
want us to be responsive 100%, because the world is
Yeah.
not like that.
Absolutely.
We're doing them harm, in fact, if we provide everything perfectly,
Yes, absolutely. That
because
wouldn't be perfect parenting either.
no,
There is
because
really no
then when
such
it
thing.
doesn't happen, it's like, hang on a minute, and they don't know how to cope.
That's true.
So I sit with that I don't have to be perfect here. I'm actually doing
Yeah.
them a favor if I'm not perfect, you know.
That's very reassuring.
Um, but yeah,
I
I
think
think,
what I'm hearing, and I think kind of if I'm trying to summarize things, like the key message is, you know, none of the scheduling options in divorce are perfect for everybody. There's no silver bullet that works for
no
every
high
family.
fiscal. Yeah, yeah,
Nesting is one of the options,
no,
and it
yeah,
has its pros and its cons, as all the others do. And
absolutely.
really, around these decisions, there's first of all accepting a degree of trial of error and error,
Yeah, yeah,
but also thinking about what works best for your family. And that includes, of course, the children, but
yeah,
also the parents, and
yeah,
what's going to allow everybody to be comfortable, to be
yeah.
at peace, and to parent in the best possible way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do your research. It's not like
Yeah,
20 years ago. We've researched literally at the ends of our fingers. You
that's
know,
true.
come into it as informed as you can possibly be, and look
Yeah,
for don't, I caution parents where they're getting their information from.
Hmm.
So make sure you're getting your information from well documented, well cited people, well
Yeah,
researched people. I'm not going to attack any sites or anything, but just don't go onto a site and take the first thing that someone,
yeah,
question why is this advice? Where's it coming from?
agreed. Especially,
Um,
I mean, what might have worked very well. You might have a friend who says, "Oh, I did nesting. It was terrible," or "It was
absolutely,
brilliant." Well,
absolutely.
that might work well in their context, but not, it's not one person's experience is not necessarily going to translate exactly
Totally.
the same in your life.
Totally, totally. And it's not black and white, we can't
No,
just make one blanket statement or, there's all sorts of little nuances that have to be considered. You could have a child who is neurodivergent and is it going to work for
yeah,
them? You
that's
know,
true.
all families are different. You have to consider everything that comes into it, all the little
In your
ingredients that make up
context,
your
yeah,
family. Yes, yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. So much to talk about.
You are
I'm sure there's a lot more we could have said, but we're gonna wrap it up just to keep this concise. Thank you very much for joining me.
you are
And
welcome. It's my pleasure.
and if anybody is interested in getting help from Bernadette because of struggling with parenting or co-parenting,
Mm.
feel free to reach out to her and get the support you need because it's a difficult period of our lives.
It is, and we're not meant to do it on our own. We are
That's
not. There's
absolutely right.
no guilt in saying, "Hey guys, I can't do this
I
alone.
need help.
Somebody just
Yeah.
validate me or anything, what you."
Thank
Okay.
you so much,
Really
Bernadette.
lovely
Have a good
touching
day.
base. Take care. Have a good time.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye bye. Bye.